Hello, fierce ones, and welcome to our monthly conversation, The Fierce, Fun, and Fantastic Women Among Us, happening on the fourth Friday of every month. During these sessions, we spotlight a member of our Fierce Awakened women community and talk to leaders and visionaries and wisdom keepers among us and learn about their fierce awakenings and the unique ways that they're bringing their gifts to the world right now. I'm Jenn Baljko, founder of Always On My Way and jenniferbaljko.com, and today I'm chatting with CinDiLo. Hi, Cindy.
Hi, Jen.
How's it going? How are you?
Great, great.
Thank you for saying yes and for being here today. It's nice seeing you again.
My honor. Thank you.
Let me tell you just a few words about Cindy and then we'll hop into this great interview today, wherever we're going to go with it. But Cindy, so always a late bloomer, Cindy feels midlife at 50 was just about right for her. After 25 years in law and academia, assisting women during life transitions such as divorce and re-entering the workforce, she created her own second act of writing and workshops for fellow Generation X women seeking to live their life, their midlife, with purpose and clarity through whentheclockstrikesmidlife.com. Again, just so you have it handy, whentheclockstrikesmidlife.com. Cindy, I love that concept. How did you
Thank you.
how did you get to that? It just sounds like brilliance right there.
Well, I had my, I don't want to call it a midlife crisis, but I call it a midlife crash. At about 45, I had about a decade of insanity, just caring for everyone except myself. My parents were ailing, raising children, wife, house, full-time employee. Um, so about that time, I decided I need to start doing something for me. And I had read about this woman who started to, I believe she started a blog counting down to do 50 things before her 50th birthday. And unfortunately, I don't recall her name, but it inspired me. And I just started brainstorming. And growing up, one of my favorite older cousins, Johnny, he always called me Cinderella. And I have two older sisters, not stepsisters, but they're two older sisters. So I was just, I don't know, my brain works in mysterious ways. So I was trying to connect something. I'm not a Disney princess fan really, but I was trying to think of clever names. First, I was coming up with Cinderella turns 50 and then all of a sudden, I don't know. I was trying to think of what coincides with the Cinderella story. And when the clock strikes midnight, and then I don't know, it came to my brain when the clock strikes midlife, and I went with it. It was available. I bought, I got the .com. I got it on Instagram, and yeah, so it's fun.
Well, I think it just sums up so much of
Yeah,
what many of us, Gen X or
right,
a little younger, a little older than us, like what we're feeling in terms of
right.
the promise that we had, right? The promises that
Mhm.
we made ourselves. Like, okay, I'm gonna go after this career. I'm gonna be the wife. I'm gonna be the kids. I'm gonna do all this stuff. And then voila, at
Right,
40, 45, 50, 55, you're like,
right.
all right,
How did I get here?
how did I get here? Where am I going? What am I doing
Right,
next? Right?
exactly.
So
Yeah,
this sounds like it plays right into what you were experiencing too. Just you say your crash, right? Your midlife crash. Can you give us a little bit more about that and what kind of fierce awakening that sort of woke up for you?
yeah. That was actually pretty much the title of my first blog post. Because I was just at a point where I knew something had to give, and I wasn't sure what the answer was. But I realized nobody was going to give me, I'm sure you've heard it before, but nobody was going to give me permission to take a nap or take the day off from doing dad's pills or, driving the kids to practice. So um, I just felt that I always knew that writing really helped me, but I literally was on about a 20-year writing hiatus as far as personal writing, because of life. So I decided I need to start getting back into writing. And one of the things, actually, let me backtrack just a bit. About 6 months to a year before I came up with the idea of when the clock strikes midlife, I decided I need to write or journal or do something for, a mental health break. And what I did was I keep a binder. I actually should have pulled it out from somewhere, but I actually, over the years, from I was a kid until including things my husband's written for me, or I've written for him, or I've written something for each of my sons when they were born. And I wrote things for my 8th grade yearbook. So long story short, I went back to this binder and I wrote these kind of inspiring short stories. And what I did was I took little blurbs of them, which I call quotes, my quotes. And then I would took some photographs that I had taken and I kind of paired them up. And the first thing I came up with was, be a starfish, always find a way to regrow. And that is from an imprint of a starfish photo that I had, which was actually taken here on vacation 10 years ago. And now I live here.
Tell people where you are right now.
Oh, I'm in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina for almost 2 years. We came down here to escape taxes in the Northeast. And but also for a better quality of lifestyle. We absolutely love it. We have a very short winter, and most of the year, except for about right now, it's very pleasant weather, and it's definitely a better quality of life.
So
And
this
it also
starfish.
has allowed me to dive more into my writing and not so much rely on, the employee job, the 9 to 5.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's given us both, my husband and I, some freedoms to really pursue what we wanted to and take a break from the rat race. So we did it.
How did you prepare yourself for that? Because at midlife we do start thinking about that. Do I want to stay in the place that I grew up? Do I want to stay in the place where I raised my kids?
Right.
Can I find another job opportunity somewhere else? How did you start framing this as possible?
Yeah, well, when we visited here 10 years ago, the other family we visited with, they actually moved here about 3 years after that. And they and their children were a little bit older than us and our children. So we knew we wanted to get the kids at least through high school. Um, so we did that. We prepared. It was one of those, exciting and terrifying and, happy and sad type of things. Um, but it really is only an hour and 15-minute plane ride, and you jump on a Spirit flight and you're there very quickly. And often it's cheaper than driving. I've gotten flights through Spirit for $28 round trip.
Wow.
And it's not bad. And if you drive, it's a half a day drive. And believe it or not, we now have a lot of other friends who are looking in this area to do something similar to what we're doing. And we also thought, we had to work so much in New Jersey that really the family member that lives an hour away or wherever it might be, we never really saw them anyway because of the rat race we were living. Now we can go visit them and spend 2 or 3 days and have quality time, you know, and that's it. So we have we've adjusted, and the children are down here too. Our sons are down here for now, and we'll just see where it takes all of us.
Yeah, it sounds like freedom in a lot of ways.
Yeah, to a certain degree,
Yeah.
it is, and it's I'm really lucky, and everybody has their level of comfort, and that we just had to decide what was important to us and go for it.
I want to go back to the writing. You pulled out your binder, you found some of these quotes, match them up with the photos, the starfish, be like a starfish and keep growing, regrowing. And what else have you found getting back into your writing as you're moving through this new phase of life? What has it opened up for you that was missing before?
Yeah, it definitely helped me with. I still lived in New Jersey at the time when I started doing that. So I think it definitely helped me in the process. It also helped me get over the 50 hump. And, as like I always say with people that post things on social media, usually the message is for the poster more than it is for the people that reading it. And that's what I realized I was doing, as much as I was coming up with these cute little quotes or quotographs, as some people call them, combining your quotes with a photo. Um, it was my way of navigating midlife, and it struck a chord with many other women in our same spot. And like I say, too, I also feel that midlife is basically more of a time in your life than an age. That's what I feel. Like you mentioned in the beginning, we all get here, and you might be 42, or you might be 52, or you might be 62, whatever it is, but often it's sometimes a life-changing event that you didn't have any control over. And maybe there's some that you do, but I think it comes to a point where you have to pause and say, like you said, where am I going from here? This is where I've been, and this is how I want to live my life more intentionally. That's another thing that I realized. I used to say that as a kid. I didn't use the word intentional living because I was 9 years old, but I used to say, I don't want life to happen to me. I want to happen to life. And that's basically what I was saying. And way before I ever knew that word, or maybe it wasn't even a word 40 years ago, um, or a theory, or a way of life, or anything like that. And I'm just not one of those people that's content to come home from work and sit on a couch and binge watch. And I do, I do indulge in that. But I just feel I've always felt this sense of purpose or something more. And I wanted more than going to Target on Saturday mornings and, um, you know, binge watching and that type of thing. I always felt there was more inside me to share.
And how are you expressing that now? I know the website is one way and you're doing some writing. How are you sharing
Yes.
this gift of intentional living, especially now in the bigger circles of our group, right? It's
Yes. So I think 2020 was a huge catalyst for the world, obviously. It forced us all to um, gain perspective in our life. And no matter the age, I mean, I have a 21-year-old that kind of had to re-navigate what he was doing. And then I have, um, my 75-year-old mother-in-law that also had to pivot. So it really affected the gamut of everyone in the entire world, which again, everybody's tired of the word unprecedented. But it really, really, and I hope as a country, as a world, that we are able to take this and move it in a positive direction, and everybody to learn what's important to them and also what's important as a community. We have to serve our community as much as we serve ourselves. And I think we were getting off track with that basically in the whole 20th century. and and I just hope that was a turning point, and we all um, get back to the, like you said, the bigger picture. But that'll only happen when we take responsibility for ourselves.
agreed. Agreed. And I think there's going to be that time of what does responsibility look like in 2022, 2021. I read a report yesterday from the Thrive community, I think it was, but they were talking about this sort of big migration away from those jobs that burn us out constantly and over again, and
Mhm.
finally this sort of standing up and saying, no, what I really value in my life is
Mhm.
this and this, and I'm going to try to find work that aligns with this. And I know, and I was reading one of your blogs too about this, of standing in the space of your second act, your third act, and how we can maneuver through this and find something that we ascribe value to in today's through today's filter, right? Of midlife, of 40, 50, 60 years old, whatever this is, whatever that state is. But do you have any suggestions on how women particularly can start negotiating this transition as they're waking up to this idea of, oh, well, I did that for 25 years. Maybe I could do something else for 10 or 15 more years, right? Like,
Right.
how do you suggest that they capture that spark a little bit and or their impulses, right? And I'll turn that question back to you. Like, how you followed this impulse, you followed it. Like, we want a better quality of life. We're going to move to South Carolina and set up
Right.
shop there, right? It's not just an impulse. It's an accumulated total of a lot of things. But
Exactly. I always say nothing happens by itself.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I would say, one thing that I always preach, if you will, especially in my workshops and even on my blog, is what always worked for me and worked for several people throughout your life is go back to what you did, what gave you joy as a child. What did you do that made you feel that time stood still, yet it went so fast? Whatever you really puts you in that moment where you're almost like in a zone and you are completely 100% present, I feel that that's really what our calling is. And some people might say, oh, it might be, making wreaths or something like that. Well, if that's your creative outlet, don't undermine it, whatever it might be. Some people just feel too, you almost have to feel again permission to be who you are. Maybe you can't, sell wreaths to pay your rent or your mortgage, but if it brings you joy or if it brings you fulfillment, do it for yourself, do it for family and friends, do it and sell a few online. I feel like we always have this, it's society's pressure that you have to be making $100,000 on your side gig, and I don't know where that even stems from. The other thing I really dislike is, again, stemming from 2020, I'm sorry, the 20th century, is where are you successful? The word successful seems to always coincide with money, and that drives me crazy. It depends on your version of success. Another recent thing is, and I know many people in our age group feel this way, is, they call us the sandwich generation. And not only because we're caring for our parents, but my parents are both gone, but my husband's parents are alive and well. And they were a decade younger than my parents. And it was a huge difference because my parents were not computer savvy or anything like that. My in-laws are. But the one thing that we're actually facing right now is sort of this judgment that, well, what are your kids doing? Well, he graduated, and okay, yeah, I mean, they're working and they worked all through college you know, there's kind of comments like, well, you're never going to find a job, the perfect job. Well, nobody's looking for the perfect job, but you want it to somehow, some fulfillment out of it. It's a kind of a tough, you really have this one generation that believes one way and this other generation, and we're stuck in the middle. And I feel like it's a volleyball match. And on one hand, it's kind of like nobody asked for your input. On the other hand, I do get that because some of those things loom in the back of my head, like, okay, time to line up jobs, time to, and I'm trying to do a delicate balance. But that's definitely society. And there is a time when you have to say, okay, now I have to pursue what I need to pursue and what I'd like to pursue. But I think there's some sort of middle ground where you can, whether it, for my one son, we suggested maybe one of the minor baseball leagues, a job. He does marketing. So whatever it might be, if it somehow corresponds to something you really enjoy, I think that's just icing on the cake. I don't think that's too much to ask for.
I agree. And I think we grew up at that time. I know in my case, I was one of the first folks in my family to go to college, right? Like
Yeah.
that was successful enough
Yes.
at that, wow, she went to college and she has a college education
Yeah.
and she's going to have this success that's based on getting a job, based on her studies. And this was a big deal in the
Mm-hmm.
1990s when I graduated, right?
Right.
but it was that message of, yes, you can do all of these things because that will make you successful. You could have the full-time career. You could raise the kids. I chose
Hmm.
not to have kids, but that was a big other problem, right? Because
Oh, I'm sure.
you choose the career or you choose the family. But when you choose both, you are in the middle of all of that. You're still always the caregiver. You're always thinking
Hmm.
of the professional next step, right? And there is a generational gap, I think, in our generation of where that message came from, how we understood it, interpreted it, and now hitting that, okay, here I am. And I love that you said that, this could be your hobby, it could be a side job. It could be successful just saying, I built 10, I made 10 wreaths for Christmas. Right? Like, and
Right.
that was enough also that
Who's defining?
who's defining it?
Right.
Who's defining it?
Exactly.
And do you have some ideas of how we can support women pivoting in these directions and cheer them on? You talked about some of your pivots. I've gone through pivots, and I think there's a whole wave coming right behind us, CinDi. Like, I think women are going to be looking for meaning and purpose.
Yes. Yes. I feel that um, for me, I was, and I think I'm sure for everyone, but this was a slow progression. I didn't like do this all in 1 year and say, oh, I'm going to move away and oh, I'm going to, sell my house and I'm going to start writing. I'm going to start a blog. It didn't happen that way. It was basically inches, and I had to realize that I was even on a journey. I was like, okay, I have to do something and I'm going to go back to writing. And my whole entire life, for lack of better words, I've hidden my writing. I really never shared my writing with anyone. Except like I said, I wrote a poem for each of my kids, and once in a while I would write something for my husband, and he would write something for me. Um, but I never let anyone read. So even that little bit of taking those quotes and putting them on a photo and putting them on my personal page, I got a lot of great feedback from family and friends on Facebook and things like that. And that was huge for me. For me, that was like I was coming out. People were like, I didn't know you could write, and on the front of my binder, I have my certificate of excellence in writing from 8th grade. Yeah, so I keep the Mrs. Lubitz. She was, it's funny how you remember certain teachers, and she was always very supportive of my writing, and yeah, so and then that's another thing I came to a realization. Okay, I haven't written a novel yet, but I am a writer, and I write. Um, so there's that other perception I feel that um, I also came from my father's side of the family would say when I actually had a website for fellow paralegals when I was in around the turn of 2000 and when the internet was a dinosaur. And the first question, my dad didn't really understand it, but he would say, how much you making for that?
Mm-hmm.
And his sister was very similar. If you said I'm going to San Diego for a vacation, how much were your tickets? you know, I don't know. And it's always like this, you feel this underlying measurement of success. It didn't matter that I had a community of women. Didn't matter, I was sort of changing lives and helping women get through difficult points in their life. How much you making? you know?
What's it worth? Right. What's it worth
Yeah, yeah.
financially?
So that's that underlying message again.
Right.
But I believe again, I think my advice is number one, do some soul searching as far as what you enjoyed as a child. Um, Write it down, brainstorm. I always brainstorm sometimes, and I just shared this with my younger son because he's at that point where he's graduating and has to make some decisions. Make a list of pros and cons. I mean, sometimes it's as simple as that. And what's your most far-fetched idea? Even for me, it was always to write a book. And obviously, I'm 53, and I've I've written a quote book or quote journal, but I don't have my novel yet or my memoir. But that's okay because I wouldn't be able to write it if I wasn't at this point in my life. So that's another thing. It's the old cliche, you're never too old. Mother Teresa started painting when she was in her 80s, I believe, or, one of those silly things. Morgan Freeman didn't have a great acting role till he was 52, or, that's the other stigma. What are you doing that for? You're 50 something. Well, okay, then it's about time that I did it, you know. Um, so whatever I would say, define whatever success means to you, even if it means living in a hut in Bali, whatever it might be. I don't think we need to stop that level of success and that level of joy. Um, so I believe health is the new wealth and mental health is the new wealth.
I think we're all realizing that. I think there's
Mm-hmm.
because it's come at the cost of burning us out.
Exactly.
The other way doesn't really quite work. It doesn't, and this idea of work-life balance, I don't know if that ever existed, but we've all pretended that it could.
Right.
And
Right.
I think you're right. I think this pause that the pandemic gave us will say, you know what? I'm only going to live as long as I'm going to live. And if I don't start something now, it's not going to happen. And I've embraced that too a long time ago, saying, I don't know what shape I'm going to be when I retire at 65. I don't know how much money I'm going to have in the bank at 65. I don't know what condition my mind and body will be in so that I could do all those things that I'm waiting to do at 65. If I start doing those at 65, I need to live to be 150 because I'll never finish them, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
And I think that's it. I think it's the realization of like, who knows what's going to come? The present moment is
Mm-hmm.
when we have to start considering this option. And it sounds like you've embraced a lot of that.
Yeah, and I think that will aid in us living longer. I really do. Um, and the other thing that I'm always finding is that when we were making our move, or now that we've made our move, so many people, friends and family that are in our age group and want to say, oh, I'm not going to move until my kids move. And I get that, but I'm not waiting another 10 years. Like anything can happen. And you know what? Worst case scenario, or God forbid something happened to my husband, or maybe someday I would move back to New Jersey. I don't know, to be back to family and, near family and friends, but we really like it here. And this is where we'd like to make a life. And that's our decision. That's what worked for us.
Yeah. And I think it's just being in ownership of some of that, right? Like looking at, okay, you have this impulse. Again, it doesn't happen on its own. It comes over time. It comes in a wave. It comes, like you said perfectly, in inches, right?
Mm-hmm.
This feels good right now. In 10 years, maybe some other new thing will come in. But what's your next inch? Like, what's the next thing you're working
Right.
on?
Right. And that gives you momentum.
Right.
Each little thing that and there's setbacks like everything else. For example, unfortunately, we sold in a bad market. So our home was on the market a long time, and
Mhm.
we expected to be down here sooner rather than later. And again, I believe everything happens for a reason, and it's fine now that it's all said and done. But at the time, it was frustrating. And, you'd have to make sure your house was perfect every day in case somebody came to look at it. And we had a couple of deals with people that fell through on their end, and it was very frustrating. But we got here, and it's fine.
Right. And it's important to consider that too, right? Life isn't all rainbows and
Yeah,
unicorns. There is
right.
disappointment and frustration and perseverance and persistence and discipline and effort, right? You have to
Yeah.
put the effort in to do stuff that you really want to.
Mhm.
But I'm thinking of, so what is your next inch? What's the next thing that you're working on right now? And
Well, I am working on a memoir, as you know.
I do know, I do know, and I'm happy to hear
Yes,
that. And I'm happy to tell folks you are because I think if you say it out loud, it becomes a little bit more
that's right.
committed.
So for those of you that don't know, check out Jenn's bio, and
Thank
she
you.
is spearheading a summer memoir writing course for us. And so far, it's really exciting, and I look forward to diving more into it.
Yeah, and there will be more in the fall because I feel like
Yeah,
I'm also doing memoir writing
that's
now
right.
too. And I
That's
feel
right.
like the more that I can share with others who are in the same space as me, the more I write the story I need to tell too, because I
Yeah,
actually do the work again
right, right.
also. So
That's and yeah, we all learn from each other in our community. It's
and
amazing. And
go go ahead.
no,
I was just gonna
no,
say
I
thank you
was
for
just
being part of that community because it's been fun.
yeah, yeah. I'm so glad I did it because again, it's one of those things. I feel like I always, or in retrospect, I always looked for again somebody to give me permission to do something. And there's certain things sometimes, whether it might be for example, I saw I saw a coupon on Facebook for a local spa, and they had a day of wellness for 50% off for $75. And normally I wouldn't do that. But then I thought, $75. My husband and I go out for burgers and a couple of drinks and we spend, $100. And this is something that would make me feel good. It's for my betterment and my health. And so I'm really starting to give myself permission to do that again, inch by inch. This wasn't like one day I just stood up and I was Wonder Woman and said, from now on, I am going to do X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to give my permission to do X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to set boundaries. You know, it really it takes conscious effort, and I'm really happy I did it. I even had to give my son the talk not too long ago with nobody's going to knock on your door. And, even myself, I have to write what I want to write. Nobody's going to knock on my door or call me and say, you are an amazing person and I want you to write a book and you can live on the beach the whole time and I will pay all of your bills.
Oh, could we hope,
Um,
Cindy? Could we hope?
right. Exactly. It's your job full time is just write this book and not worry about a thing. I'll feed the dog and, you know,
Right. And
all
I'll
those.
iron all those clothes and wash all those
Exactly.
dishes for you too. And
Exactly. So I've gotten to a point where my desire to do that is more than being comfortable. And I really think that's what it is. I've seen something recently that I really loved, and I know it's circling around social media, which is, um, working out at 5 a.m. is hard, but being sick is also hard. So, and comparing those things, whatever it might be, there's another good friend of mine also always says, there are so much talent and ideas that have gone to the grave. And I actually would like to start eventually getting into like ancestry.com and the family tree because I'm really curious. Like my family, as far as I know, came from like, peasant farmers in Italy. And was somebody a writer? Because my one cousin actually, he's not a writer as a profession, but he's also a very good writer and very creative. And I wonder, like, did I have a grandparent or a great grandparent that was a writer? Or I don't know. I mean, for all I know, maybe they never learned to read and write, maybe just a couple of generations ago. I know my grandmother came here at 18 with a sponsor in 1918, over 100 years ago. And I don't know how much she was educated. But that, I feel like you get that to that point in your life as well. For some reason, when you get older, you appreciate learning about your ancestors or learning about history. Whereas when you're a kid, it's kind of like, yeah, I heard that story, or,
but isn't
but
it
you want to
true?
connect with that.
It is so true. I found myself in recently in a lot of that space of wondering, like, who was my great great grandfather? How did my great grandfather end up there? Like,
Right,
how d- who who got him there? Like,
right,
how did he leave his little island and get to the mainland and figure out how to go to another country? Like, how did he do
right.
it?
Yeah. I mean,
All
they
of
didn't
that
have
stuff.
GPSs
Right, they
or
didn't have
phones,
Google or phones or internet.
right? It's amazing. It really is.
And I am finding at this point in life that I do want to know those stories, like the stories that I heard
Yeah,
that I
right.
don't really know anymore, that I didn't really hear, that I just was sort of not sort of tuned into, but not really. And I feel them coming, like in my own writing process, like find out the story about this. Like that's a message for me. I'm like,
Yeah,
how am I going to find out that story? I don't
right.
even know who knows it anymore. I don't know who knows the story.
Exactly. I know my parents and their siblings are pretty much almost all gone, so it's hard to I know that people always say, when your grandmother or grandfather tells a story, listen because someday it'll be meaningful. But you as a kid, you don't appreciate it, or as a teenager,
No. It's only, but it's at midlife, I think, when we start looking at our, are we at midlife or are we beyond midlife?
Right,
Who knows, how much further we have, but what can I help leave behind? What can
right.
I leave for those who come after me? What can I clear from my own lineage? I'm also thinking of that very strongly
Yeah.
lately. But I have a million other questions for you, CinDi, but I'm gonna leave this here. What
Okay.
else? What else would you like to add before we fly off into summer and the strike? The clock is continuing to strike the hour that we're in.
Okay. The only other thing, also going back to how other women can sort of delve into their journey. Again, think about what you loved in childhood. And I think, and it's not a secret, that women do better in communities. And I think for me, that stems from I am the youngest sister and pretty much the youngest grandchild and cousin. So I used to just sit at the table as a kid and listen to my sisters and my cousins, mostly female, just talk. And I remember just sitting there and I would just listen and listen and listen. And I think that gave me a great perspective. And it also gave me a sense of getting support from women in community. And looking back, this is another thing, again, that I learned in retrospect. And a recent friend of mine, Carmen Rubin. She's a children's author as well. And she said to me that she realized, and you learn this from writing your own memoir, is that your whole life has been pretty much leading up to this. I look back, and when I was a paralegal and I was creating online communities when online was a dinosaur. And of course, Mei Ling Chan helped me, as you know, because that's how we bonded. And
Yeah.
and again, she and I started a mommy group together when we were new moms. She and I started a mompreneur group a little bit after that. And then soon after that, I created my paralegal community and a newsletter and ways that paralegals can connect and find jobs. And then now my way of delving into this part of my life was a community of midlife women. And I was also, as a paralegal, I was helping women going through divorce. And when I was teaching in academia in the paralegal programs at some of the universities, I was helping women again, whether they were going through divorce or getting re-educated, getting back into the workforce. And I didn't see the pattern then. But now I realize this is what I've always been doing. I've been creating communities of women. When I was a kid, like 9 years old, I created a cat club. So my friend and I, who I'm still friends with since fourth grade, we took cardboard boxes and made rooms for the cats. We made a house and we cut out little cardboard doors and the cats get, but this is the way our minds worked. But yeah, so I always created these clubs and had this sense of community and wanted to bring people together as a networker. And that's who I am. I find that's another thing, you just realize this is who I am, and accept that for what it is. Don't worry about if you're making money or not making money. The true wealth is fulfilling your heart.
It is. It is. And when you follow it, I think we learn that as we get a bit
Yeah.
older, that whatever's come before is leading you to where you are going. It's just
Yes.
taking the pause and seeing those dots and connecting it and seeing the patterns and saying, you've been creating clubs and networks and community for all of these decades already, right? Of
Right.
course, the next step for you is to band together with the women of your own age group now and share these experiences, which I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that you're out there in the world helping to give women this opportunity and give yourself this, right? It's a learning experience for you too, as much as it is a
Yeah,
sharing.
absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. CinDi, you are amazing, and I'm looking forward to having this conversation continue online and continuing going forward with this. And I can't wait to hear what's coming up for you in the fall. And when I post this, make sure you put some comments in the section below so we know what's coming up, what workshops you're offering as we get into the fall. And just again, where people can find you, whentheclockstrikesmidlife.com, right? That's the best place to find you right now.
Yes. Thanks so much, Jen. It was great seeing you face to face again.
Yes, thank you, CinDi, and good luck with your memoir. Good luck with your book, and I know we'll
Thank
be
you. Thank
touching base on that too. So,
you for your encouragement and your guidance.
thank you. Thank you.
Hey, everyone.
Bye. See you next time.